The intensity of games in Brazil are getting higher.
Yeah.
And for example, if you look at two games that we played this season against Cruzeiro, it looked really like a high-level European game. We've got four first-team scouts, and all of them are reporting directly to me, and then I'm reporting directly to sporting director, who's taking the final decision. Coming to Greece, we had to start a lot of things from scratch. So there was scouting department, but it had to be modernized.
Yeah.
A lot of new processes had to be implemented. If you work for the football club, you can't just focus on building the structures, building the process, because you have to deliver certain solutions right away. Nobody's going to wait 1 year before you build it. We've got very clear and defined playing style, game model, and there are very specific requirements for each position. Data is not something that dictates decisions, definitely not, but it's an important tool to try to take better decisions. It's not just about discovering a hidden talent somewhere and trying to bring it to your club. Of course, it's part of the job, but the other part is to...
Hello and welcome back to the podcast, and today's guest is Andrii Fedchenkov. So Andrii is currently the head of scouting at Brazilian football club Flamengo, and in this conversation we get to learn more about his journey within the world of professional football scouting. So that journey is definitely an interesting one, to say the least. So it started out in his home country of Ukraine, and he worked for two clubs there, including Shakhtar Donetsk. From there, he moved over to Greece, and then from Greece, he ended up in Wales working with Cardiff City, heading up their scouting department. So after a spell with Cardiff in the English Football League, he moved over to his current position in Brazil with Flamengo. So in this conversation, we speak about aligning a scouting department, what he thinks about when he goes into a new club, and that includes a new country, a new culture, speaking different languages. And then we also talk a little bit about communication and how important that is in the recruitment process. And also we touch upon data. So it's a great conversation and I really enjoyed this one. So hopefully you enjoy it as much as I did. Okay, so before we get into the conversation, I want to quickly ask you to subscribe to the channel if you're watching along on YouTube. And if you are listening or watching on Spotify, you can also hit the follow button on there too. So both of those things really help the channel to continue to grow, and it makes it easier for me to attract interesting guests just like the one we have for you today. So I also want to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's video, which is InPlay Online. So that is a video analysis software that allows you to tag your videos, draw on your videos, create video playlists. So if that's your sort of thing, then InPlay Online is definitely worth a look. So more on those guys later, but I have left a link in the video description just below. So also within the video description, there's a few other links which you may find useful, which will help to support the channel. So there's some free resources, there's some educational resources. There's also a link to my website, which again, we dive deeper into all things scouting and recruitment on there too. So without further ado, let's jump into today's conversation. Andrii, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm very good, Chris. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm very good. I'm looking forward to this. I know it's been a long time coming because, you know, we've both been busy, but I think I first messaged you when you were at the Club World Cup, if you remember. So we might as well, I wanted to ask you how that was and as an experience for you.
Yeah, probably you texted me first back in June. That was amazing. That was amazing experience, amazing tournament. It was absolutely great time to be there. I think we also did a really good tournament in terms of games, in terms of results, in terms of performance. Obviously, we won against Chelsea.
Yeah.
That at the end became a World Cup winner, and that was an amazing game. And in general, that was great experience.
Yeah, perfect. Nice. So what I'm hoping to achieve from this conversation, Andrii, is to learn a bit more about yourself in terms of the different roles that you've had in scouting. So you've got quite a unique pathway. So we'll get onto it, but we've got kind of, you grew up obviously in Ukraine, then you ended up in Wales, and then, well, Greece, Wales, and now obviously Brazil. So it's an uncommon path. So it's one that I want to learn a little bit more about if we can. So I will pass it over to you, Andrii, just to give yourself a bit of an introduction if you can, for those that don't know who you are. Who are you and what are you currently doing in football?
Yeah, so currently I'm in Flamengo in Brazil, working as a head of scouting here. So basically my job now is to manage, to coordinate the scouting department and help sporting director with transfer solutions, with player recruitment solutions. Before that, as you said, I've been working in Cardiff as a lead scout for a little bit more than 1 year. Prior to that, I've been in Greece in PAOK, and before PAOK, I've been working 4 years for Shakhtar in Ukraine, which is my country.
Yeah.
And well, the club I started my football career was Karpaty, which is a small club from my city.
Yeah, interesting. So I'm just curious to ask how you first got into scouting, Andrii. From as you mentioned, you grew up in Ukraine. I mean, you didn't actually, from what I understand from your LinkedIn profile, you didn't study a sports degree or anything like that. So how was your path? What was the origins of Andrii into scouting?
Well, probably when you're a kid, like everyone, you want to become a football player. Nobody wants to become a scout being 10, 12 years old. Everyone is imagining himself at big stadiums with a crowd playing football. But fortunately, I was lucky to understand at good point that I'm not going to be a professional football player. It's better to focus more on education and on other ways to get into football, into professional football, rather than trying to pursue a career of professional player. And to be honest, it was not easy because back then in Ukraine it was pretty difficult to get into football without prior football experience, without playing experience. So most of the positions in the clubs were filled with by people who used to play professional football, and so that was the most common pathway for those roles. The player retires and becomes whatever, scout, analyst, coach, youth coach, anything that exists. So it was pretty challenging to get into football. I think I was just lucky, if I'm completely honest.
Yeah.
I was just lucky because back then it was in 2016, if I'm not wrong. In the club of my city, there was new technical director who was foreigner. So I tried to get that opportunity. I tried to just to call him to arrange a meeting to present him what I know, what I don't know, what I can do, how can I be helpful. And basically that's how I started, from a volunteer role, then youth scouting role, and then basically a first team position.
Perfect. Very interesting. So was that your local team then, Andrew? Is that where you grew up? The Carpathia? Is that the team where you were living basically?
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay, perfect, nice. And then obviously after that one, you mentioned you moved on to Shakhtar Donetsk. Was that obviously that's the big club? Most people listening to this will know of Shakhtar. So was that moving? Did you move there as a scout? Was it a similar role? And how did that kind of move come about?
Yes, I moved as a scout. So in 2018, there was new head of scouting coming to Shakhtar, who was Portuguese, José Boto, and he was looking for one more person to add to the scouting department. And so basically, I got into the process, into the selection process, and at the end of the process, I was offered a job. It was a massive step, to be honest, because it was like 1 year and a half from being never working in scouting,
Yeah.
work in Shakhtar, which was a Ukrainian champion, which was a club that used to play every season in Champions League, that was known for a huge and very that was known for giving a big importance to the scouting work
Yeah.
abroad, especially in South America. So it was a massive step. It was a big challenge, but it was great. I spent 4 years in Shakhtar at the end. Obviously, I'm very grateful to José Bot for that opportunity, and that was amazing 4 years. I think Shakhtar is a great club. It's a very, very good club in terms of the structure, in terms of the organization, and in terms of the philosophy. And the, if you can say that, they really know what they want to do. Obviously, nobody, everybody can make mistakes, but they really know what they can do. They have a clear philosophy in terms of player recruitment, in terms of playing style, and yeah, that was really great place to work.
Yeah. Interesting. Just going back to the first your first kind of opportunity, Andrew, because a lot of people that watch this channel are in similar positions. They want to get into scouting, and obviously you mentioned you took that chance of just reaching out and basically saying, "This is what I can do. You know, this is how I can help." I mean, why do you think you were given that chance at that time? Was it something special that you presented, or was it just you were showing willingness to learn, or just so other people can maybe kind of resonate with that?
It's difficult to say, and I think every situation is unique. It's probably difficult to give a certain advice like how to act. Probably nowadays, there are more opportunities in terms of showcasing your abilities because you've got Twitter, you've got social media where you can basically post everything you want. And I know that many people who work in clubs
Yeah.
really follow what's being written on social media, even if they usually say on the press conference, no, I'm not reading social medias or medias. uh, in most of cases is not true. Everybody likes to read about himself, about what's written in the press, especially if it's written with at least certain degree of professionalism, of expertise.
Yeah.
And I think that's if that can be an advice, I think this would be my advice to try to showcase your your knowledge, your expertise publicly, and attract some attention this way.
Yeah, definitely.
We basically had um, I know a few people who got jobs in football
Yeah,
this way.
same. Yeah, definitely. There's been quite a few that I've already had on the podcast that take that exact route, Andrew, in terms of they started out, whether it be on Twitter or LinkedIn and stuff. So it definitely works. And just to reiterate what you said there, people in clubs will, if you have a fault, if you start producing work and it's good work will get noticed. Whether it might be, a scout within a club and they notice your work and maybe reach out to you and kind of go from there. So yeah, definitely that was interesting. So. Okay, so a quick interruption for anybody with an interest in video analysis. So I did mention at the start of this video that this episode is sponsored by Imply Online. So I wanted to spend just 1 minute going over exactly what that actually is and why it might be useful to you today. Okay, so Imply Online is a cloud-based video analysis software, but unlike other analysis software, it's not going to cost you an absolute fortune. So prices start from as little as £10 per month, and that's not including the discount code that I've put in the video description down below, along with a link to take you to the website to find out more information. But as a really quick overview, it will allow you to basically break down your match or training video. So if you are an analyst, a coach, or a scout, and you're wanting to do more video analysis, then Imply Online would be a great option for you to check out. So not only can you tag the videos with various different button types, so a tag button, a label, or even a start-stop button, you can then add a bit more detail and depth to the clips themselves. So that includes adding comments. You can even add voice notes and also do drawings or telestrates over your clips to make them more interactive. As well as that, you've got video playlists, which can be a great way to download clips to store and share them offline, but also store databases of clips in terms of maybe best practice clips, or if you're a scout, for example, you might have a playlist for a particular player that you are monitoring. So there's a whole lot more to it, but like I said, you can click the link in the video description to find out more detail. So that's it for the interruption. So let's get back to the episode. I wanted, because obviously you're doing this interview, and I'm very grateful that you're doing this interview in English, Andrii. So it's not obviously your first language. So I just wanted to ask you about that because in preparation for this, I seen you do another interview and you speak Portuguese very well as well. And I think you probably have another couple of languages from your LinkedIn profile. So did you learn English at school? Is that what you did in Ukraine as a child? When did you learn all these languages, and how do you learn these languages?
Well, English is something that you got in your life all the time, especially if you're interested in football and you want to work in football. That's something you must know, you must learn.
Hmm.
Yes, I think all in Ukraine, all kids are learning English in school.
Yeah.
Um, I can't say I really learned English in school because it was also a lot of things like movies, like books, like
Yeah.
programs, like football games, whatever. And it's still a process. I still don't speak English perfectly. Still learning every day something new.
Yeah. And how about Portuguese? Because I know you mentioned Jose Boto, who you also worked with as well when you moved to Greece. So was he the influence on the Portuguese? And obviously you're speaking that now in Brazil, I'm sure. So where did that come about?
And we with José Boto, we are working here in Flamengo. He's sporting director in
Oh, he's there
Flamengo.
as well. Okay, of course. Yeah. So yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But the funny thing is that I started to speak with him in Portuguese only here in Brazil. All the time before we were speaking in English.
Right.
Um, why Portuguese? I was never thinking I was going to work in Brazil. But when I was working in Shakhtar, as you know, the big emphasis of the club is Brazilian market.
Mm.
And I don't know how many players they have now, how many Brazilian players they have now in the team. But back then, there was 12, 13, 14 Brazilian players in the team.
Yeah.
So basically, there was a joke even in the club that it's Ukrainian players who have to learn Portuguese rather than Brazilian players have to learn Ukrainian.
Yeah.
And but okay, in terms of work, it was pretty important because when you do a scouting in Brazil, when you trying to get into the local into Brazilian football, into Brazilian market, you have to speak with people, you have to connect with people, you have to get to know people who work in football, whether it's be agents, scouts, directors, analysts, whoever can be useful, if I can say this. And that was necessary. Was necessary to learn Portuguese. So yeah, that's how it happened.
Yeah. No, interesting. And do you also did know Russian, Spanish as well? Is that another couple of language?
Yeah, well, Russian is probably because unfortunately for the big part of my life in Ukraine, Russian was pretty widely spoken language in Ukraine.
Yeah.
So that was something you cannot avoid.
Mm.
And yeah, Spanish. I learned Spanish before Portuguese, so that was also a thing that helped to
Yeah.
learn Portuguese because the languages are from the same language group, language family. So that was helpful.
Nice, perfect. Like I say, you're doing a fantastic. You said you're not perfect in English, but you're doing a great job, Andrea. I really appreciate that. So,
You can always do better.
well, this is practice for you, so that's perfect. So you mentioned that you moved to Greece. I want to. That's kind of a move where again you're moving away from Ukraine now. So you've had the big step up to Shakhtar, which is obviously a big move, but it's still in your home country. So going to Greece, that was a big move for you, I'm sure. Can you just talk about how that came about, and what you were actually doing there? Because from what I understand, you were doing scouting, but you're also kind of assisting and helping Jose Boto in that technical director kind of role that he held at that time.
Yeah, so the main function was still head of scouting, and the main function was to lead and to manage the scouting department and basically do all the job related to the player recruitment process prior to signing. But also the second part of the job was to assist in different day-to-day things that happen in the club, in assessing certain departments within the club, in producing certain evaluations and reports about academy, about other departments within the first team. So that was basically it, and it was great experience because it it helped me to look at many things from different perspective, from perspective more of a sporting director, which I was not, but I was very close to someone who was taking the decisions, and obviously it enriched a lot my view of how the things are, how the things work in football.
Yeah. And from your perspective then, Andrew, what were the changes or maybe big things that you noticed were different between football and working in football in Ukraine to moving over to Greece, like into maybe the style of play or maybe the types of recruitment styles, if you can share anything on that.
Um, it's a big, to be honest, not so much in playing style.
Mm.
There is obviously there are clubs that play in different ways, but it's not like the cultural thing that there is different playing style in Greece compared to Ukraine. But probably the biggest difference was the let's say outside influence on the clubs. Saying that, I mean Greece and Greek clubs are very emotional, if I can say that.
Yeah.
So there's huge fan bases. There are huge fan bases which doesn't exist in Ukraine,
Mm.
and there is much bigger pressure on the clubs, on the decision makers within the clubs. So yeah, probably that was the biggest difference.
And in terms of like the actual scouting departments, Andrew, was it a step up or step down in terms of the size of the number of scouts and the infrastructure that you had between Shakhtar and PAOK in Greece?
Um, I would say it was pretty similar in terms of size, in terms of structure, in terms of even resources, and like resources for the processes, not
Yeah,
to sign players.
yeah, yeah,
So there was not a huge difference, but coming to Greece, we had to start a lot of things from scratch. So there was scouting department, but it had to be modernized.
yeah,
A lot of new processes had to be implemented. While in Shakhtar, it was already it was already it's been already working
yeah,
for a couple of years. So it was the process that we had to start from scratch. And when you're starting a process, and if you work for the football club, you can't just focus on building the structures, building the process, because you have to deliver
yeah,
certain solutions right away. Nobody's going to wait 1 year before you build a scouting department and set up all the processes within it. You still have to deliver every day, not every day, but like before every window,
yeah,
before every important deadline. So yeah, that was intense, but it was interesting.
yeah. I mean, so before you joined PAOK, then Andrii, I'm presuming you're obviously concentrating on Ukrainian football. So Greek football, you probably didn't know too much about it at the time. So when you're going into a new country like that, and obviously you've done this multiple times, you've gone into Greece, you've gone into English football, and now obviously Brazil. What's going through your mind in terms of trying to make sure that you can get up to speed in the quick amount of time? So you're going into that new environment, new club, new processes. What's your thought processes kind of doing that?
Um, it's interesting. It's definitely very interesting because when you go to a new country, new environment, it takes you out of the comfort zone.
Mm,
It it requires a lot of adaptability. So you've got to keep your certain working standards, working principles, working views, but at the same time you have to adapt to the culture, to the language, to the people, to the language of football, which is I'm not I don't mean saying that. I don't mean language in linguistic sense, but in terms of how the people are speaking about football,
mm,
how do they look on things in football, how do they assess certain moments in the game or in the. So it requires big adaptability
mm.
and certain effort, definitely, but it's quite exciting, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah, cool. So, in terms of then, we're going to get into it a little bit more in the current role that you're at, Andrew. But I just wanted to ask, in the roles at, let's say, in the role in Greece, were you predominantly doing more, say, video scouting than live scouting, and did that differ from your time? You mentioned Shakhtar had lots of South American players, so I'm sure that a lot of that is done video scouting. But how did that look in terms of PAOK and the types of scouting you did there?
Not to be fair, the club where I traveled the most was
Okay.
Shakhtar.
Yeah.
Uh, it was South America, it was Europe.
Mm.
Um, and since PAOK probably it started to decrease. Um, from some point because of the role that I had. So it was more managerial role within the club rather than just
Yeah.
a pure scouting.
Yeah.
But also because um, we streamlined the process that way that we were able to economize on resources, on time by doing much more video scouting and doing a lot of things, probably 95%. Since PAOK, then Cardiff, then Flamengo, we're doing probably 95% of scouting through video.
Yeah.
Um, and then live scouting is just certain situations, some particular cases where we need to check a player or a certain tournament being present there.
Yeah, yeah, cool. Okay, so let's move to your time at Cardiff then, Andrew. So you were there for around about a year, from what I can tell. So again, another country, another move for you. Now into English football. How did that come about? Firstly, Andrew, where did that job come from, and kind of can you talk us through kind of the initial steps of joining Cardiff?
It was it was something I never expected. It came up pretty randomly. Um, so when I left when I left PAOK at the end of 2023, I was contacted by a Belgian club, um, and they were looking for a head of scouting, and I started to speak with them. And during the conversation, during all this, when we started to get to know each other, I got to know that they have the same owner that Cardiff, so the same ownership group.
Yeah.
And then at some point they told me that Cardiff is also interested in signing a professional of my profile. And then I started to speak with Cardiff and with guys from there.
Yeah.
And then it happened pretty quickly, pretty straightforward. I moved to Wales in probably 2-3 weeks after our first conversation.
Yeah.
So it was also pretty intense, and it was before the January transfer window. So besides of the things of moving and setting up the routine, there was a huge load of work,
Yeah.
which made it a little bit more intense, but it was also good.
Yeah, everything happening at once then. So in terms of, I'm just curious, so that's not really around the scouting position, but obviously moving into English football, Andrew, as when you were growing up, who was the team, did you have a team that you followed in English football at all, or who was your team growing up?
Yeah, as I had, I'm not gonna tell. Look, to be honest, it doesn't matter anymore. Work in football, those kind of feelings probably, unfortunately, they start to disappear because you start to look at the things that happen in football from more professional perspective. So the feeling of fan, of being someone who doesn't really who's not working there but just support the team, it probably evaporate a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, English football has always been a thing that I cannot say I was dreaming to work in, but it was always a place that you think, oh, that must be high level.
Yeah. So you obviously Cardiff in the championship. The championship very known as a very competitive league. You know, some very big teams and there's lots of variation in the teams as well. You've got some teams with huge budgets and teams with much smaller budgets. So in terms of that department that you were going into, Andrew, I'm just curious to ask what that looked like. So did you go in as the head of scouting at Cardiff? Was that role?
So there was a setup in the club back then without the, I don't know how it is now, probably the same, but there was a setup without sporting director. So there was a CEO, there was a head of recruitment, and who basically head of recruitment oversaw, together with the manager, the whole recruitment process.
Yeah.
And then there was me, who was basically coordinating the day-to-day work of the scouting department and providing options to the head of recruitment and the manager.
Yeah. And you spoke about before, mainly video scouting then at Cardiff as well, was it?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then, so in terms of the coordinating, so you're managing which players are getting watched, you may be putting players forward to the head of recruitment and things like that. So that was just before you said just before a transfer window. So, was it a busy transfer window for Cardiff at that time? Did you bring lots of players in, or was it how did that go?
It was busy. It was very busy. To be honest, I would lie if I say I had big involvement or influence on that, because obviously I just came to the club. I tried to help as much as I could, but it was busy transfer window. If I'm not wrong, we signed a couple of players in the last 2 or 3 days of the window.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a good welcome into the market in English football.
Yeah.
When I just arrived.
Yeah. And did you have any, and this maybe you can answer this for either any of the clubs you've been at, Andrea, are you dealing with, probably more so now, but dealing with agents in this? Like you mentioned that you was coordinating scouts. Was that your main thing? Were you speaking to agents then, or was that more of a head of recruitment kind of task? Or
It depends. It depends on the situation. But in certain cases, you've got to speak with agents. You've got to understand the situation of the player. If the player can, at least in theory, could be feasible for your club, because obviously you don't want to put forward the names that that are players that are impossible to sign.
Yeah.
So sometimes you got to do that homework before presenting a player.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, let's get to your current role then, Andrea. Really, this has probably got lots of questions about your kind of current position. So, firstly, I just want to ask what it's like over in Brazil. Like, what's it like living in Rio? Like, how is the life over there for you?
Well, I've been here before, obviously before coming to live, before moving.
Mm.
Um, I like it. I quite like it. It's the lifestyle here is pretty different from what we are used in Europe.
Mm.
Obviously, after South Wales is a big climate change as well. Um, but I'm quite enjoying it. I'm quite enjoying it.
And what about the? I think you touched upon it with the passion of the supporters in kind of Greece and so on. What's it like over there in Brazil? Because you know, obviously,
Oh,
known
yeah,
for.
it's even bigger. It's even more crazy.
Mm.
Um, especially in Flamengo.
Yeah.
Especially Flamengo is it's without being not humble, but Flamengo is the biggest club in South America
Yeah.
in terms of fan base. So it's a madness. We've got 65, 70,000 supporters at each home game. And then when we are going away games, sometimes there are more supporters of Flamengo than the other teams. It's 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 exciting. Then you also feel this even in your social media
Mm.
when the team, especially when the team loses. Um, you've got a lot of recommendations of the players that the fans want to sign. Uh, yeah, but that's part of it.
Yeah. I mean, it must be quite a great role to have in terms of it comes with the pressure, but it's such a prestigious role, especially in football, in soccer, like to work for such a huge club in Brazil. It's yeah, it must be exciting. I mean, I just wanted to ask you, for those that don't know, because I don't watch any Brazilian football. I don't have the time to watch Brazilian football really, but I've seen clips and stuff here and there. But what's the kind of, how would you describe the style of play in the Brazilian league, Andrew, to people that are kind of outsiders to South America? I know some will have seen some in the Club World Cup, but apart from that, that's basically what most people will have seen. Okay, so if you've made it this far into the video, you must be enjoying the content, either that or you've simply fallen asleep. So whichever one of those it is, you won't mind me asking you for a quick favour. So if you remember right at the start of the video, I did ask you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. So now would be a good time to do that if you haven't got around to it. So the stats are showing only 30% of regular viewers are subscribed. So there's a hell of a lot of people out there that are watching the videos and have not yet got around to hitting that button, but I'll let you off because you can do it right now in just 1 second. So as well as subscribing, if you are enjoying this particular episode, then it would be great if you could give it a thumbs up, even if you also shared it to a friend, let's say, if you think they would also find it useful. And then if you wanted to get involved by starting a discussion or asking a question, you can also leave a comment down below the video on both YouTube or Spotify. So that's enough for the interruption. Let's get back to the conversation.
Well, probably the biggest difference compared to the top European leagues is the speed of the game and general intensity of the game, which is definitely lower. Although I must say that it's changing slowly, but changing. The intensity of games in Brazil are getting higher.
Yeah.
And for example, if you look at two games that we played this season against Cruzeiro, they were really high intensity games from the first minute to the last minute. So it looked really like a high level European game.
Yeah.
In terms of the speed and dynamics on the pitch. Then in terms of quality, there are a lot of quality players, to be honest, not just in Flamengo, but in other clubs as well. And you can see this also by the signings that European clubs are doing in Brazil.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've got a few questions, Andre, around the interview you did, which I think I mentioned at the start, you spoke in Portuguese then, but you kind of described a bit about the department and kind of what you get up to in your day to day. So I would say just a few questions on that really. So I think one thing you said in there was, in the past, Brazil was almost seen as a kind of like an exporter of talent. So players would typically, if any player was of a high standard, they would typically move on and move over to Europe. But you started to maybe see a shift in that, which maybe then is how the style of play is changing as well, rather than just having the older players. It's more of, it's an environment in which young players will stay and kind of thrive in Brazil rather than moving on.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not an economist, but I think it has a lot to do with the economy of Brazilian football that
Yeah.
grew a lot recently.
Mm.
There's a lot of it's not the case of Flamengo, but there's a lot of foreigner investment into Brazilian football. You've got few American owners in the league. You've got few big groups that enter the league, like Bahia is a part of City Football Group, or you obviously have got Red Bull Bragantino, which is part of Red Bull system. So it probably means that there's more within football. There's more funds,
Yeah.
and it gives more opportunities for the clubs. First, not to sell the players if they don't want to,
Yeah.
and then to sign players of certain caliber, of certain level.
Mm. Yeah, because I also heard you kind of said that, you mentioned as well the fans, the pressure that comes with the fans, but, I think you said the fans obviously see who you do sign in terms of the players that you do bring in, but what they don't see is all of the work that goes on behind the scenes, and maybe you don't sign a player or you pass on a certain player for a reason that probably the fans will never know. So I just wondered if you can talk a little bit on that, Andrei, in terms of it's not just about who you do sign, it's also about who you don't sign as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's complex. It's a complex function within the club scouting department. It's not just about discovering a hidden talent somewhere and trying to bring it to your club. It's of course it's part of the job, but the other part is to give certain assessment on the targets, on the players that are being proposed, on the players um, that came up to the club in some way, and to help basically the club hierarchy to take the final decision, the best possible final decision.
Yeah. Okay. So then when you joined the club, Andrei, you mentioned in terms of the importance of setting foundations and making sure that even things like the templates that the scouts use in the databases and make sure everyone is aligned in the club. So was it a case of that when you came into the club, you were able to make some changes and almost like put a stand, maybe modernize the department almost? Is that fair to say?
Yes, I think it's fair to say. Um, I think the communication in general, communication within the club and within the department is a key thing. You've got to have a streamlined way of communicating, because at the end that's very important part of the overall efficiency of your work. And obviously, having patronized reports, patronized ways of delivering scouting insights, scouting intelligence is a massive part of that communication.
Yeah. So on that communication point then, Andre, I mean, how do you, as a scouting team, how do you like to communicate? Is that done on regular meetings? Or if, and I suppose you also have people that aren't based in Rio as well. So how are you kind of making sure that there is alignment and communication throughout the team?
No, to be fair, here we've got all the scouts are full-time scouts that work in the training ground. So there's nobody who lives outside.
Yeah.
Um, Well, the first and the most important way of communicating, in my opinion, always been and will be is just a scouting report.
Yeah.
Scouting report is the most important way of keeping information, of communicating that information. Obviously, we've got a database where we store all the reports and all the important data on the players that we have analyzed. And then obviously we've got few scouting meetings per week and per month, just to align a little bit on what we are working on, what are the priorities, what has been done well, what has been done wrong, what should be our focus in the next couple of weeks or month.
Yeah. And then again, still on communication, I suppose the kind of the efficiency also leads to the speed that you can make decisions at. So obviously in the game of scouting, it might be that you need to act on a player really quick, or you might need to, someone needs to pass through the system quick to be able to get the deal done. So I suppose do you feel that is helped by having a kind of agile small team when it comes to the scouts and be able to act quickly?
Definitely 100%. we've got four first team scouts, and all of them are reporting directly to me, and then I'm reporting directly to sporting director, who's taking the final decision. So it's pretty straightforward. There's no many levels of that path, and that's pretty. I think that's very important for every club, for every basic club.
Yeah.
And then it's very important for me to have very direct communication with sporting director to be able to deliver everything I think is important to deliver to him quickly and without anyone in the middle.
Yeah, and how involved? Because again, this will, I'm sure, differ between different countries and of course different clubs. But how involved is the head coach in that, Andrii? Is the club one where the head coach is basically given players from you guys as a team, or is the head coach also involved in the recruitment process quite a lot?
Probably compared to English football and the culture that it was set up in English football throughout the years, where the manager had a big influence or key influence on the player recruitment. It's different here, but obviously the coach has a say, especially in terms of the profiles of the players he wants to see on each position.
Yeah.
So the playing style is massive. We've got very clear and defined playing style, game model, and there are very specific requirements for each position. And that's something that we take into consideration while analyzing players, while scouting players. And obviously it's always a fundamental part of our discussion about the targets, if the player really aligns with what the coach wants for the player in that position.
Yeah. It definitely makes sense. I mean, there's definitely a switch, like you mentioned, like back in the day, the manager, especially in English football that I know, the manager would be the person that's bringing the players in. But then when that manager then leaves and gets sacked, it's like everything needs to be changed and kind of started again. So to have that model, especially, once the alignment's there and, the head coach knows and what type of player the head coach wants, you and your scouts and your technical director can go and do what you're good at and go and bring, certain options that meet them criteria to the head coach. So yeah, definitely makes sense. So do you have the same kind of transfer window over there then, Andrii? What does that look like in South America?
It's a little bit different. It's similar, but it's a little bit different because we've got a season starting in the beginning of the year, calendar year, and ending in December. So for us, the biggest transfer window, the most important transfer window is January, February. It's 2 months instead of 1 month. And then the July, August transfer window is a mid-season transfer window where the clubs mainly get some reinforcement, but it's not a squad building transfer window, let's say.
Yeah.
At the same time, we understand that, for example, European clubs, if they come to sign players in Brazil, it's probably going to be in European summer, so in July, August, which means that many clubs will lose their players
in the middle of the
season. July, August, which means they have to go on the market and sign some players. So it's similar, but it's a little bit different.
Yeah, the timelines is a little bit different. Okay, so and then in terms of, because I've spoke to people on this channel, Andrii, that maybe have recruited in different parts of the world. One being kind of the MLS, where they have different rules and regulations. I was just wondering if there's anything similar to that in the Serie A in Brazil in terms of like wage caps or rules, and in terms of who you can bring in from which countries and nationalities. Is there anything like that you have to consider?
There is a limit of 9 foreigners in the match day squad.
Okay.
So that's probably the only limit that we have in terms of regulations.
Yeah. Is your squad? Do you have the full allowance of foreign players in your squad from your knowledge, or are you more south? Are you more? Is it mainly Brazilian players that you have in the squad, Andrii? Like your current?
Not really. We've got 4 Uruguayan players.
Okay.
We've got 1 Ecuadorian players, so it's 5. We've got Colombian players, it's 6. We've got Chilean players, it's 7. We've got Spanish player, it's 8, and we've got 1 Argentinian players, it's 9. So we are fully booked.
Fully booked.
But yes, it's not only Brazilians.
Yeah. Yeah, nice, nice. So just going back to, because you mentioned the importance of the scouting reports, Andrii, that the scouts are kind of completing and submitting. So we've spoken about this in the past on the channel as well, in terms of all of those reports are types of data. So, and many clubs will collect these reports, but they don't really have a great system for filtering and making sure that those are actually getting utilised how they should be. So I suppose what I want to ask you really is how important is the managing and the storing of those kind of scout reports to ensure that you're not just filling out reports and then just they never get seen again, almost, so that they actually are impactful in the recruitment process.
It's definitely very important. It's definitely very important to be able to find everything you need quickly, to know how to navigate in your scouting system, to know where to look for the information you need. But at the same time, it's always a mix between automatizing it and just a real communication between people. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong, and there's nothing wrong in just asking a scout, can you just resend me a report that you've done 3 months ago?
Mm.
It's, it depends. It depends on the situation, and
And how about kind of, I suppose, training the scouts really, Andrii, to make sure the scouts that you have in your, because again, they're the guys that are going to be looking at the players. So is it something that to keep them aligned effectively in terms of when you bring a new scout in, how do you get them up to speed with what you expect from them as a Flamengo scout?
um, obviously, when you bring a new scout, you expect him to have already a certain level of expertise, probably certain experience, and certain ability to adapt to how you work. And that's basically what we are trying to do in the during the selection process when we are hiring someone.
Mm.
Um, and then it's basically just to it takes a couple of weeks just to get to know the systems and get to know the style of reporting. And usually, if the person passed our hiring process, that person must be it must be pretty easy for that person to get through all these steps.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. So then, I think I heard you mention this in the previous video, Andrii, in terms of the data personnel within the club. So data is kind of heavily used in scouting now. I mean, how does that look for you guys at Flamengo? Do you have a separate kind of analyst or team that specializes in data, and how do you integrate that into your day to day?
Yeah, we've got a whole data department within the first team,
Yeah,
which supports not only scouting department but also first team and performance side. How do we integrate it? We integrate it a lot, and I would say it's important part. First of all, it helps to filter the players, to filter the options, to narrow down the list of, say, 100 players to 15 or 20
yeah,
that we can do more work on. And then it helps in situations where we have a specific player that we might already analyzed, that we might already evaluated, but it helps to get more information, more insight on that player, maybe to see certain red flags on data that were not obvious for us while analyzing him, doing just a video-based analysis. And it's not something that data is not something that uh, that dictate decisions, definitely not.
yeah,
But it's an important tool to try to take better decisions.
yeah. And how do you think about things that aren't typically picked up via stats, Andrii, such as things like teamwork and work ethic and things like that in a player? How do you consider that when bringing a player in?
I think it's important. I think it's important, and I think it's not sometimes very easy to assess, because obviously it's all these things are very subjective, and we still hear a lot of things like, I don't have a good feeling about this player, or my gut feeling says that he's not a good guy or he's not a good professional. Usually when someone says that, there is certain evidence base that made that person thinks this.
Mm.
Um, but obviously it's important. It's important to try to understand the mentality of the player, especially if you're signing a player for Flamengo where the pressure is huge. Is huge. Sometimes we have the situations where the player enters 70,000 stadium, made a few bad touches, and you start to feel the pressure of the own fans on that player. So the player has to be really mentally strong to be able to play in this environment, to be able to overcome certain difficulties, and certain difficulties will happen always. And it's not easy, but yeah, that's also the important part that we're trying to understand in the mentality of every player that that was evaluated positively.
Yeah, I suppose that.
In technical from technical perspective.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose that would kind of also be highlighted in, the background checks that you do on players. It's not just looking at how they perform in the games that you watch. You might speak to, previous coaches that they've worked with, previous players. They might now know a current teammate and things like that. So that, I suppose, you're pulling all that information together to make a decision on whether that player will be a good fit or not.
Yeah, definitely. If you're doing a big investment, you're trying to get as much information as possible. But at the same time, here we are coming back to the point of speed of decision making and
Yeah.
quickness of importance of speed in this environment, because you might want to collect more and more and more information on a player, and by the time you collect all the information you want, the player is already gone.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
at some point you've got to stop and say, okay, I'm taking this risk.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
every transfer is a risk. Every
Yeah,
transfer is a risk.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, that's a good way of putting it. That's a good way of putting it. So I wanted to ask you about the kind of youth players, Andrii, because again, I know very little of Brazilian football, but I know even less of kind of the academy set up over there. Like, what does that look like compared to what people will be used to over here in England, let's say, in terms of English football academies? Do you guys have a similar setup over there? And how reliant are you on younger players within the club?
Look, I'm probably not the best person to answer this question because I'm not really much involved into the academy structure. We've got a separate academy scouting department, which is aligned to our standards, but is still separate department. In terms of the structure of the youth football, I think it's pretty similar. You've got national competitions, you've got local competitions. Probably, obviously, the biggest difference to England is the size of the country, which is England is just like one state in Brazil in terms of territory. So it means that there's more difficulties in terms of travel, in terms of logistics, if you're talking about national competitions. But in terms of youth scouting, we were doing a lot of youth scouting in Shakhtar because our focus back then was not just professional players like senior players, but was mainly even under 20 or under 17 players in Brazil. And obviously, when you sign such a player into Europe, you have to be very patient. You have to be very patient. You cannot expect player to come and to perform straight away on the professional level in Europe, even if it's Ukrainian league, which is definitely not the best league in Europe, but still, you've got to be very patient. You've got to understand how to develop that player within your system, how to adapt that player, and just give time. Sometimes there are clubs that make this mistake when they sign a young player from Brazil or from other South American country, and the expectation is that the player will perform tomorrow. And it's not always the case. You've got to know what to expect. You've got to know what you buy, and you've got to be you've got to have patience and to understand that it's not the player will not show everything straight away.
Yeah, perfect. So
in most of the cases.
yeah, definitely. So a recent guest that I had on the podcast, Andrew, was similar in a sense that so Tom, who scouted in also around the world in terms of the Middle East, USA, UK. So he's kind of done it over different continents. You are very similar in that regard. So you gave some advice at the start in terms of advice for new scouts. This is in terms of sharing work and kind of putting yourself out there. But I just wondered if you could talk more specifically on potentially how moving about and taking a leap to a different country or something like that, how that's maybe helped you develop in your career so far.
It definitely helped. It definitely helped because especially probably Ukraine, Greece, UK, and Brazil are for not just different countries, but they are really different. They are really distinct in terms of football, in terms of culture, in terms of mentality of people, and it gives you it opens you a lot of new perspectives on how the people live, what do they do in every day, what is their approach to work, what are their views on different things. And as I said before, it requires a huge adaptability. You've got to understand people. You've got to try to communicate. You've got to make yourself understandable for people. Um, Mainly, unless you're, I don't know, unless you're a superstar, Cristiano Ronaldo, you have to adapt to people, not people have to adapt to you. I think it might be challenging, it might be difficult. In some cases, it pays off. In others, probably not. I cannot give advice to someone, oh, you got to travel all over the world, because it's obviously the choice of everyone. It might be also stressful. It might be difficult. But that's probably, if you want to pursue career in football, it's something that is part of this business.
Yeah, no, definitely agreed. So almost there, Andrea. Just got a couple of questions in terms of looking forward and looking ahead into the future. So I just wondered if you firstly have any thoughts on how you might see scouting and recruitment in general maybe develop as we go into the future, whether that's with more data, more tech, and how it might change. But then also personally to you, what's your longer term kind of? Do you think about what you want to do in football maybe 10 years from now? Like, what is it, sporting director role that interests you, or anything similar?
So answering the first question, I where the scouting goes. Look, I think the first very important thing to understand is that what is scouting? What is this job about? And it's not about. I know some people who think that scouting is about writing reports or watching a lot of games or traveling a lot, being on the road. It's not about that. It's about providing solutions, trying to provide solutions for someone who's above you in our hierarchy. It's trying to help the decision makers to take the best decision possible. It's not always doing what you like to do. It's not always doing what you think you have to do. No, it's about doing what someone who's above you thinks will help them. Sometimes you're being told about this straightforward. I need this and that. Sometimes no. Sometimes you have to adapt yourself. You have to understand the situation. You have to understand the context. And from here, I think that the future of scouting, as you asked, probably lies in. I won't be an innovator saying that, but it lies probably in bigger utilization of data, in proper and better data interpretation, which in my opinion is still a big there's a big hole in terms of proper data interpretation. Saying that, I mean, there's a lot of data, there's a lot of numbers, there's a lot of there's a lot of numbers and statistics, but I feel like there is still not so much insight based on that data. When you're looking at certain number, you not always understand what this number really represents in terms of player quality, in terms of player evaluation, and that's the biggest point, I think. And that's probably it. I think the people who will be able to properly connect data with football will be very, very in demand in this industry.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think you put that really well in terms of firstly what the role of the scout is in terms of making an impact for the other people at the club. Like that's your job, but then also the data in terms of yes, the really big elite clubs will have huge data teams that are getting big and great insights from this data, but a hell of a lot of teams still are. There's more data than they can utilize, or more data that they can actually get insights from. So yeah, that was perfect. So just the second bit of that, then, Andrii, in terms of you personally, what's your kind of goal? Do you have aspirations, goals, sports director potentially, or?
To be honest, I think I'm not thinking about this now.
Mm.
I'm pretty happy with the role I've got. Very motivated to do as much as I can where I am now.
Yeah.
I'm at big, huge club with amazing opportunities. So that's just the focus
Yeah,
now.
definitely. So, final question then, Andrea. I always ask everybody that comes on if they have any. I don't know if you read many books, Andrea, or you listen to podcasts. Any recommendations? No problem if not. But I always like to ask because there's some good. And I suppose if you say a Ukrainian book, it's not going to be very useful to anyone unless it's in an accessible.
No, I won't say Ukrainian book. I would probably say um, the book Think Fast and Slow was something that had a big
Yeah,
impact on me
yeah,
in terms of understanding better of how my brain works, how certain decisions are made, and it definitely helps.
yeah.
There is a book that I recommend for people who want to familiarize themselves with the data.
Okay,
It's called Naked Statistics, if
yeah,
I'm not wrong.
okay, nice.
Um, and probably the last one was one of the books that I liked is it was written by current co-owner of Southampton, Rasmus Ankersen.
Yeah,
Is called The Gold Mine
Gold Man
Effect.
Effect. Yeah, yeah, know that one.
So I'd really recommend those
Yeah,
three.
good answer. Good answer. I'll link all of those down below. So perfect. That's everything I wanted to go through, Andrea. Well, firstly, I want to say thanks again for taking the time to do this. Really appreciate your time. Anything else you want to give a shout out to before we end?
Uh, I just to say thank you for having me. It's been great 1 hour. Um, Looking forward to listen more podcasts
Perfect.
of at Chris Gill channel.
Nice one. Appreciate that. Well, good luck for the rest of the season, Andre. Hopefully, I know you're kind of. I think you're very close. Very close to the top of the league, basically. So hopefully, I'll be looking out for the results. So enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully catch up with you soon.
Thank you, Chris.